sir, that boy." The maid's voice trembled as she stared at the portrait. Tears filled her eyes. Her gloved hand covered her mouth. "That boy lived with me in the orphanage." The billionaire froze mid-step. His eyes darted to the painting, a young boy's face smiling softly inside a golden frame. "What did you just say?" he whispered, and in that moment, a 20-year-old secret began to unravel inside the walls of that mansion. The Harlow mansion was more than just a home. It was a monument of wealth. Polished marble floors, gold-framed art, and chandeliers that glowed like small suns, but despite the light, the house felt empty. Its owner, Richard Harlow, was a man of immense fortune and cold reputation. His business empire spanned countries, yet behind closed doors, grief had made him hollow. He had once been a husband. He had once been a father. His only son, Michael, had vanished 20 years ago, abducted during a park outing when he was just 5 years old. The police never found him. Only his little blue sweater was discovered by the riverbank, and since that day, Richard Harlow's heart had turned to stone. Years later, a new maid arrived at the mansion. Her name was Grace Miller, a soft-spoken woman in her early 40s. She didn't talk much, but her eyes carried stories of struggle, loss, and quiet strength. To everyone else, she was just another worker, but Richard's personal assistant had hired her from a charity home, a program that placed widowed women in domestic jobs. Grace worked silently, cleaning the halls, tending to flowers, polishing the silver, until one day she wandered into the main gallery. That was when she saw the portrait. A boy, no older than 6, painted with such realism it almost looked alive. His blue sweater, his innocent smile. The tray in Grace's hand slipped and crashed to the floor. Her body went cold. Her eyes widened. Her lips trembled as tears welled up. "Oh, dear Lord," she whispered. "That's him. That's my Michael." The sound of breaking glass echoed through the hall. Richard stormed in, his voice sharp. "What's going on here?" The butler began to explain, but Grace suddenly turned to Richard, her face pale, her hands shaking. She whispered, pointing to the portrait. "That boy. He lived with me. In the orphanage." The room went silent. Richard blinked, his jaw tightening. "What did you say?" She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I worked at St. Helena's Orphanage. That boy, I know him. I took care of him for 3 years. His name was Michael." Richard's heart skipped. "Michael?" "Yes," she said through tears. "He used to call me Mama Grace." The billionaire's voice turned cold. "You're mistaken. My son was taken 20 years ago. He died." Grace shook her head. "No, sir, he didn't. He survived." Grace's hands trembled as she clutched her apron. 20 years ago, she began. "A little boy was brought to our orphanage after a fire broke out nearby. He was hurt, frightened, and barely spoke. We never knew where he came from. He said his name was Michael, and that his father was coming back for him." Her voice cracked. "He used to draw pictures of a man in a blue suit. Said that was his daddy." Richard felt the air leave his lungs. "That was him," Grace continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "One night, the orphanage caught fire. I carried as many children out as I could, but the building collapsed. Michael was gone. I thought he didn't make it." She looked up at the portrait again, trembling. "I never stopped praying for him." Richard turned away, voice breaking. "No, this can't be true. My son's body was never found, but they told me he drowned." Grace stepped closer. "Then why does this painting look exactly like the boy I raised?" He looked at the portrait again. The blue sweater, the innocent eyes. His knees weakened. He whispered, "My God." The next morning, Richard ordered his team to retrieve every record from St. Helena's Orphanage. Most had been destroyed in the fire, but one file survived. Inside it was a faded photo. A young boy, sitting on the steps of the orphanage wearing a tattered blue sweater. On the back, written in careful handwriting, "Michael, age 6. Richard's hands trembled. Grace sobbed quietly. He used to tell me he dreamed of a big house with lights everywhere. I didn't know he was describing this one. Determined to know the truth, Richard hired investigators to trace what happened after the fire. Weeks later, they found a lead, a hospital record of a boy rescued from the fire, transferred under the name Ethan Miller. Grace gasped when she heard it. They gave him my name. The file revealed that the boy had been adopted overseas by a couple who later perished in an accident. The boy grew up, returned to the city as a young man, and tragically died 5 years ago. But there was one more discovery. The young man had donated a large sum of money to rebuild St. Helena's Orphanage under the name Michael Harlow Miller. Richard's voice cracked. He remembered both of us. Grace broke down, whispering, "He always said love never dies. It just changes its home." Months later, the Harlow mansion transformed. The cold, empty halls were now filled with laughter, not from parties, but from children. Richard turned his estate into a home for orphans, and standing at the entrance every morning was Grace, the woman who had once saved his son, now helping save hundreds more. The mansion, once a tomb of grief, became the Michael Harlow Foundation for Children, and every evening, as Grace passed the portrait, she whispered softly, "Rest now, my boy. You found your way home." He was a billionaire who lost everything money couldn't buy. She was a maid who gave everything she had. Love, and together, they built something eternal. Comment home if this story touched your heart. Tell us where you're watching from. Kindness connects us. Subscribe for more cinematic stories that remind us the greatest treasures in life can't be bought. They're found in love.